Hello, and welcome to my channel. Today, I have a story to tell, a story that will make you think about the value of kindness. It's about a young man who works tirelessly to make ends meet, but on one fateful stormy night, he decides to give up his precious meal to help two strangers. Little did he know that seemingly small act was the key that would unlock an opportunity to change not just his life, but his entire neighborhood forever. Is kindness a luxury or a priceless gift? Join me as we find out. The alarm clock's bell screamed meaninglessly. It had been broken for a long time, shattered after a fall onto the rotten wooden floor. But Liam Anderson didn't need it. His internal clock was programmed by something more powerful than any machine anxiety. At 5:30 in the morning, the darkness was still as thick as ink. Liam slid out of the old single bed he had slept in since he was 8, the bed his mother had bought before the accident. The floorboards creaked under his feet, each sound a reminder of the fragility of the house. Liam tiptoed past his grandmother's room, where Eleanor was sleeping. Or pretending to be, she was always awake at this hour, Liam knew. She tried to stifle her labored wheezing, but the faint whistling sound still seeped through the thin wall, piercing straight into Liam's heart. Elm Street told its own story. The peeling yellow paint gave way to the gray of time. The porch steps sagged in the middle, bearing the marks of decades of burdens. The windows were held together with tape because no one could afford to replace them. But despite their poverty, Eleanor always kept the house impeccably clean. She always said, "Poverty doesn't mean losing your self-respect, son." Liam put on a faded t-shirt and the same jeans he had worn yesterday. He rummaged through his pocket, checking his remaining money, $3.47. Enough for the bus to school, enough to get to the diner, but not enough to get back. Tonight, he would have to walk 5 miles home, but that was okay. He had walked farther for less important reasons. The journey to school and the diner was a trip through two different worlds. One side was the wealthy neighborhood with its neatly manicured houses and sparkling cars in the driveways. Liam glanced at lives he could only imagine. Then he would pass the old apartment complex where his friend Jerome lived. The parking lot was full of potholes and the shattered remnants of broken dreams. And then the abandoned shopping center, where the older kids gathered smoking and planning futures that would probably never come to fruition. When Liam arrived at Murphy's Diner, the owner, Mike, was already there preparing for the morning shift. Mike just gave him a nod. It wasn't a lack of friendliness, just a sign of being busy. They didn't talk much, but there was an unspoken respect between them. Mike knew Liam always arrived on time, worked harder than any employee twice his age, and never complained. In the kitchen, Liam's hands moved through familiar motions, stacking plates, hot soap, scrubbing, rinsing, drying, repeating. His hands were now rough and calloused after months of this work. Sometimes he looked at them and wondered if a college student's hands were different, softer. Maybe hands that held textbooks instead of dishcloths. A small window from the dishwashing area overlooked the parking lot. Liam watched the flow of people as he worked. Families rushing to drop their kids off at school. Groups of construction workers stopping for coffee. Business people in suits on their phones. All of them lived in worlds Liam could only dream of. At 7:15 a.m., the shift ended. It was time to face the real challenge school. Roosevelt High School stood as a tired old brick building on the east side of town. The paint was faded, the computers long outdated, and half the lockers didn't work. But inside these walls, Liam became a different person. Here, he wasn't the dishwasher. He was the straight-A student, the tutor for his classmates during lunch. Mrs. Patterson, his English teacher, was the first to recognize Liam's potential. "Liam, you have a gift with words," she told him one afternoon. "Have you ever thought about college?" College. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. Kids like him didn't go to college. Kids like him graduated and found work right away if they were lucky. But Mrs. Patterson saw something else. She started bringing him application forms, scholarship information, and brochures with pictures of manicured lawns and library towers. "I can't afford it, Mrs. Patterson," Liam said softly. "Maybe not today, but dreams find funding when the dreamer is worthy," she said. During lunch, while the other kids bought hot meals in the cafeteria, Liam ate his peanut butter sandwich and read college brochures. State University Community College business programs. The cost was all too great. Even with financial aid, it would take everything Eleanor had and more. After school, the loop continued. Dishwashing at Murphy's. The evening customers were different from the morning ones. Families celebrating small victories. Couples on dates. The elderly who came to eat to ward off loneliness. Liam watched them all. He noticed the small things, the way a woman carefully counted her change, the way a businessman left a generous tip when he saw an exhausted employee. He saw the kindness that crept into the diner through small gestures in quiet moments. When he got home, Eleanor was in her armchair, her oxygen concentrator hissing softly beside her. She was 73 but looked much older. Diabetes, arthritis, high blood pressure. Her body was failing, but her spirit remained strong. "How was your day, son?" She asked the familiar question every evening. "Good, Grandma. How about yours?" "Better now that you're home." They didn't talk about the pills she could barely afford. They didn't talk about the doctor's appointments she had missed. They didn't talk about the college applications Liam was hiding in his backpack. Some conversations were too heavy for the nightlight. Instead, they watched the news together. Stories of success, of other people's tragedies. Lives that seemed to belong to a different universe. But tonight, things would be different. Liam was about to make a decision that would change everything. He didn't know that for the past 3 days, someone had been watching him. They had asked about the young man who helped an elderly neighbor, who tutored for free at the library, who gave up his bus money so Eleanor could have lunch. Someone was about to put his character to a final test. Liam looked at his calloused hands. They had worked hard to earn money to nurture hope. Tonight's meal was not just food. It was a symbol of effort, of choice. Tonight's meal was everything he could be proud of. And in just a moment, the kindness in his heart would be weighed on a scale facing a challenge he could never have anticipated. The November rain in this neighborhood didn't just fall. It attacked. Tonight, it hit the windows of Murphy's diner like bullets turning the parking lot into a battlefield of puddles and raging streams. Liam scraped the last crumbs from a table during his evening shift. His stomach empty, but his mind buzzing with anticipation. For the past 3 days, he had been saving every penny for this moment. No snacks after school, no soda at lunch, and walking both ways instead of taking the bus. All of it for the simple joy of buying himself a meal, of sitting down as a real customer instead of working behind the counter. The burger and fries waiting for him at the pickup counter were more than just food. They represented a choice. For the first time, Liam got to decide what he was eating rather than just taking whatever was cheapest. But as he reached for the tray, something made him stop. Table 6. The corner booth usually reserved for couples on dates or families celebrating birthdays. Tonight, it was occupied by 2 people who looked completely out of place. An elderly white couple, both soaked. The woman's silver hair dripped steadily onto her designer coat. Even wet Liam could tell the coat was worth more than he earned in a month. The husband sat ramrod straight despite his age, but his expensive suit clung to him like a wet newspaper. They had ordered coffee. Nothing else. Just coffee. And they had been nursing those 2 cups for over an hour. Liam watched from behind the counter as the woman opened her purse for the 4th time. Her movements grew more frantic with each search. She emptied the contents onto the table tissues, Reading glasses mints, but no leather wallet, no money clip, nothing. She whispered something urgent to her husband. He patted his coat pockets, then his pants pockets, then back to his coat. His headshake told the story before he said a word. "I don't understand," the woman said loudly enough for Liam to hear. "I was sure I had it when we left the house. I was sure I had it." The husband checked his pockets again, this time with a panicked desperation. He pulled out an antique gold pocket watch, examining it. As if money might magically appear behind the face. Nothing. Sandy, the evening waitress, approached their table with a visible reluctance. She had worked here long enough to recognize the signs. Good people in a bad situation. The kind of problem that broke your heart but wouldn't pay the bill. "Ma'am, sir, I'm so sorry to bother you, but..." She held the check with 2 fingers as if it might bite her. The woman's face crumpled. "We are terribly embarrassed. We seem to have lost our wallet. I don't know why. This has never happened before." From the fragments of conversation, Liam pieced together their story. Their Mercedes had broken down on the highway 2 miles from the nearest exit. They had walked through the storm to find help, hoping to call their son from the diner's payphone. But that phone was also broken, held together with electrical tape and good intentions. The man's voice carried an authority of decades even as he faltered. "Perhaps we could leave something as collateral. I have my watch and my wife has some important papers." "I'm sorry," Sandy interrupted gently. "But Mike has a strict policy. No exceptions." Mike himself emerged from the kitchen, his arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't a cruel man, just a realistic one. The diner operated on a razor-thin profit margin. Free meals even for a desperate old couple just couldn't happen. Not if he wanted to stay in business. "Look, folks," Mike said, his voice softer than his expression. "I wish I could help." "We understand," the man said quickly, rising from the table. "Come on, Margaret. We'll find another way." Margaret clutched a worn leather briefcase to her chest like a shield. For just a moment, as she stood, Liam caught a glimpse of what was inside. Official-looking documents, some kind of certificates, and something with a familiar-looking gold-embossed logo, though he couldn't place where he had seen it. The couple moved toward the door, their dignity intact, but their pride clearly wounded. Outside, the storm howled with a new ferocity. Lightning illuminated the empty parking lot where their luxurious car waited like a stranded island. "They can't go out in that," Sandy murmured, looking out the window. "Not at their age, not in this weather." But Mike had already turned away, back to his kitchen, back to keeping the business afloat. Liam looked at his untouched meal on the counter. The burger was still warm. The fries were still crispy. The reward for 3 days of sacrifice sitting there, while 2 people who clearly lived a very different life faced a moment of humiliation. He knew that feeling. The elderly couple reached the door. The man's hand was on the doorknob when Margaret stopped, looking back at the warm diner they were about to leave for the cold, wet night. That's when Liam made his choice. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that this moment had been engineered for 3 days. The broken Mercedes in the parking lot was strategically placed. The lost wallet was safe in Margaret's coat pocket. Harold's antique watch had a secret compartment holding more money than Liam made in a year. He was about to enter the most important test of his life, disguised as a simple act of kindness. Liam didn't think. He just acted. His meal was still on the counter, still warm, still waiting, still representing 3 days of careful sacrifice. But seeing Margaret's shoulders slump as she faced the storm-lashed parking lot, something inside him made a decision. "Sandy," he called out, crossing the diner with quick steps. "Wait." The elderly couple turned back. Margaret's eyes were red, whether from shame or the cold rain, Liam couldn't tell. Harold's pale blue eyes stared at him with an astonishing intensity, as if he were seeing Liam for the first time. "Ma'am, sir," Liam said, approaching their table with his untouched tray. "This one's on me." Silence hung in the air. Margaret blinked repeatedly. "Oh, son, that's very kind of you, but we couldn't possibly." "Please." Liam placed the burger and fries in front of them, then slid into a chair without an invitation. "My grandma always says kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you give it away." Harold's gaze didn't leave Liam's face. Something flashed in those pale blue eyes. Calculation, recognition, but his voice remained calm, full of dignity. "Son, that's your meal. You worked hard for it." "And I can work for another," Liam cut in. He called Sandy over. "Can you get them some fresh coffee and ask Big Mike if I can use the kitchen phone to call about their car?" Sandy nodded, understanding immediately. "Pete's garage is still open. He specializes in emergency tows." As Sandy hurried off, Liam turned back to the couple. "I'm Liam Anderson." "Harold," the man said, extending a hand that felt surprisingly strong for his age. "And this is my wife, Margaret." Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for a fry, and Liam pretended not to notice. "We haven't had anything to eat since breakfast," she admitted softly. "Our car broke down on the highway, and we walked here in the rain. We thought we had our wallet, but—" She trailed off in a moment of shame. "Cars break down," Liam said simply. "It can happen to anyone." Harold looked at him with those sharp blue eyes. "You work here after school and on weekends to save for college. What do you want to study?" "Business administration. Something to help my community, maybe." Liam shrugged, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "Sounds kind of silly, I guess." "Not at all." Harold's voice carried an authority that seemed at odds with his current situation. "Tell me about your community." It was a strange question from a stranded traveler, but Liam answered anyway. "Roosevelt High School needs better computers. The neighborhood needs a medical clinic. People have to go all the way across town for basic care. And there's an old shopping center that's been abandoned for years. Prime real estate just sitting there." Margaret and Harold exchanged a look. She clutched her leather briefcase more tightly. And again, Liam caught a glimpse of that gold-embossed logo. Something about it nudged at his memory, but he just couldn't place it. Sandy returned with coffee and news. "Pete's on his way. Should be about 20 minutes." "Thank you," Harold said, then turned back to Liam. "What was your last name again?" "Anderson. Liam Anderson." Harold took out an expensive business card holder. Real leather gold corners. Then he stopped. Instead of taking out one of the elegant cards inside, he reached for a plain napkin and carefully wrote on it. "Liam Anderson," Harold repeated, as if trying the name out. "And your address." The question sounded oddly formal, but Liam answered. 1427 Elm Street. Margaret whispered something urgent to her husband, and Harold nodded, turning back to Liam. "Son," Harold said, his voice shifting to an almost formal tone. "What you did tonight, giving up your meal for complete strangers, tells me everything I need to know about your character." "It was just food," Liam protested. "You needed it more than I did." "Just food." Harold smiled, but there was something behind that smile that made Liam feel like he was missing something important. "Margaret, show him." Margaret hesitated, then opened her briefcase slightly. Inside, Liam saw official-looking documents, certificates with formal seals, and what looked like architectural blueprints. Everything bore the same gold logo he couldn't identify. "We are not just stranded travelers," Margaret said carefully. "We are here for a job, a very important one." Before Liam could ask what kind of job required architectural blueprints, Pete's tow truck rumbled into the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the rain. Harold stood up, his posture straightening. In the diner's fluorescent light, his demeanor changed. The image of the helpless old man was gone. In its place was someone who clearly expected to be obeyed, to be respected, to be listened to. "Pete," Harold called out as the mechanic walked in, shaking rain from his jacket. "Yeah, that's me. You the owner of the Mercedes?" "I am." Harold's voice was sharp, professional. "How soon can you get it running?" Pete scratched his head. "Well, sir, depends on the problem. Might have to tow it to the shop for a diagnostic." "Money is no object," Harold cut him off. "Whatever it takes." Liam blinked. 30 minutes ago, this man couldn't afford a cup of coffee. Now he was telling a mechanic that money was no issue. As they were about to leave, Harold stopped at the table where Liam still sat, trying to process what had just happened. "Son," Harold said, placing a firm hand on Liam's shoulder. "Tonight, you gave us something far more valuable than a meal, and I want you to know we never forget kindness." He slid the napkin with Liam's information into his coat pocket, as if it were a precious document. Margaret stepped forward, still clutching her briefcase. "Liam, what you did tonight means more than you realize, more than you could possibly imagine." "It was just," Liam began. "It was character," Harold interrupted. "Pure selfless character, the kind that is rarer than diamonds and more valuable than gold." As they headed toward the door with Pete, Harold turned back one last time. The storm had passed, and the streetlights illuminated his profile. For just a moment in that light, he looked familiar, not like someone Liam had met, but like someone he had seen somewhere before, maybe in a newspaper or on television. "We'll be in touch," Harold said, and something in his voice made it sound less like a polite goodbye and more like a promise. The Mercedes started on the first try. As the luxury car disappeared into the night, Liam sat alone in the quiet diner staring at his reflection in the rain-streaked window. Something extraordinary had just happened, but he couldn't begin to figure out what it was. What he didn't know was that Harold had already made the calls that would change everything. The first was to his assistant. "Cancel my morning meetings. I need a full background check, academic records, and letters of recommendation on a boy named Liam Anderson." The second was to his lawyer. "Draft the paperwork we discussed. I think we found our candidate." The third call would be made at exactly 9 a.m. tomorrow to the principal of Roosevelt High School. But for now, Liam just sat in the quiet diner wondering why giving away his meal felt like the start of something much bigger than hunger. Murphy's diner felt different after they left. Quieter, as if the air was holding its breath. Sandy came over to Liam's table, shaking her head in astonishment. "Kid," she said, "I've been a waitress for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like that." "Like what?" Liam asked, still staring out the window where the Mercedes had disappeared. "You just gave away your dinner to total strangers. The meal you saved up for 3 days to buy." She slid into the booth across from him. "Most people would have just ignored it. But not people like you. You weren't raised like that." Sandy smiled. "Your grandma Eleanor must have done something right." She paused, looking at his face. "Something was weird about that couple, though, don't you think?" Before Liam could answer, Mike emerged from the kitchen carrying a fresh plate. A burger, fries, and a slice of apple pie that definitely hadn't been on the original order. "Kid," Mike said, placing the food in front of Liam, "what you did tonight shows you have a great heart." Liam looked up in surprise. In 6 months of working here, Mike had never given him anything for free. He ran his diner like a military operation. Every penny, every portion was carefully calculated. "Mike, I can't take this." "You're not taking charity." Mike's gruff voice softened a little. "You're taking respect. There's a difference." "But the cost?" "The cost is my business." Mike pulled up the stool Sandy had just left and sat down heavily. You know what I saw tonight? I saw a young man who has more class than a customer who drives a car worth more than my house. Liam took a bite of the burger. His first real meal in hours. They seem nice. Just down on their luck. Down on their luck. Mike nodded slowly. But there's a funny thing about being down on your luck. Sometimes it reveals a good character, and sometimes it reveals something else entirely. What do you mean? Mike stood up, adjusting his apron. Nothing, kid. Just eat your dinner. You've earned it twice over. When Mike returned to the kitchen, Sandy leaned closer. He's right. You know something was off about those people. What was off? For one, Pete said their car started right up when he got to it. No engine trouble at all. He said it just needed a jump, like the battery had been disconnected on purpose. Liam frowned. That's weird. And another thing, Sandy continued. Did you see the old man pull out a wallet when Pete asked to be paid, a fat wallet? Funny how he couldn't find it when he needed to pay for coffee. The comment hit Liam like a physical blow. Harold had said they lost their wallet, yet he paid Pete without any trouble. How could a person lose a wallet and find it within 20 minutes? Maybe it was in the car. Liam offered weakly. Maybe, Sandy said, but she didn't sound convinced. Or maybe there's more to this story than we know. Liam walked home. The path took him through the neighborhoods that told the whole story of his town. Past the manicured houses with perfect lawns and security systems. Past the apartment complexes where families like his lived on what little they had. Past the empty lots and abandoned buildings, symbols of deferred dreams. At home, his grandma Eleanor was waiting for him in her armchair, the oxygen concentrator hissing softly beside her. The late-night news was flickering on the TV, but she wasn't really watching. Son, you're later than usual. Is everything all right? Liam told her about the elderly couple expecting her to be proud of his kindness. Instead, she listened intently, asking detailed questions about their appearance, their clothes, and their car. Silver hair, you say, and pale blue eyes. Yes, Grandma. Why? Eleanor reached for the TV remote and turned up the volume. Sometimes the angels disguise themselves as people in need just to test our hearts. They weren't angels, Grandma. Just people having a tough night. She patted his hand with her paper-thin fingers. You hold on to that big heart, Liam. It will take you places you can't even imagine. What places? The places good people deserve to go. That night, lying in his narrow bed, Liam replayed every moment of the encounter. Harold's intense blue eyes. Margaret's mysterious briefcase. How Harold's entire demeanor changed when Pete arrived. The business card holder he never used. The napkin with his information treated like a precious document. His phone buzzed. A text from Jerome. Heard you bought dinner for some strange old people at Murphy's. You're gonna go broke helping everyone like this. Liam smiled into the darkness. Maybe Jerome was right. Maybe kindness was a luxury he couldn't afford. But tonight, seeing the gratitude replace the humiliation in the eyes of two strangers, the feeling was worth more than any meal he could have had. What Liam didn't know was that 3 blocks away in the penthouse suite of the Grandview Hotel, Harold and Margaret Blackwood were reviewing a thick file with his name on the cover. Inside were his academic records, letters of recommendation from teachers and neighbors, and a detailed report on his family's circumstances compiled over the past 3 days. Straight A's, Margaret murmured, skimming the documents. More than straight A's, Harold replied, making a note in the margin. He didn't just pass the test. He exceeded every expectation. In the morning, they would make the call that would change everything. The call to the principal of Roosevelt High School. The next day, Liam arrived at Murphy's and found Sandy practically vibrating with excitement. That couple from last night, she said. Pete told me something crazy. When he got to their car, someone was already waiting. a driver in a black suit. What do you mean? A professional-looking guy standing next to a second car. Pete overheard the old man talking about foundation protocols and candidate assessments. What kind of stranded person talks like that? The words struck Liam strangely. Foundation protocols. Candidate assessments. During first period, Mrs. Patterson pulled him aside. Liam, I had a very interesting phone call this morning. Someone was asking about your character, your grades, your college plans. They already knew a lot about you. She lowered her voice. They didn't ask if you were a good student. They asked if you were a good person. At lunch, Jerome found him in the library, phone in hand. Yo, D, you gotta see this. He slid his phone across the table. Look at this article. The headline read, Blackwood Foundation announces surprise local visit. Liam skimmed it quickly. The Blackwood Foundation, a $200 million philanthropic organization, is conducting community assessments for a major new initiative. Its CEO is personally visiting potential sites. But Liam stopped reading. His eyes were fixed on the foundation's logo, an elegant gold emblem. It was the same one he had glimpsed in Margaret's briefcase last night. Jerome, Liam asked, what does the CEO look like? The article says he's very private and avoids public photos. Jerome looked at him curiously. Why? Before Liam could answer, the loudspeaker crackled to life across Roosevelt High. Liam Anderson, please report to the principal's office immediately. In his 6 years at Roosevelt, Liam had never been called to the principal's office. Not once. As he walked down the hall, students stared and whispered. Teachers stopped to watch him pass. Through the glass window of the main office, Liam saw Principal Martinez talking to two people seated across from his desk. An elderly white couple in expensive clothes. Harold and Margaret. But they weren't the desperate travelers from last night. Harold's posture radiated authority. Margaret's designer coat was spotless. And spread out across the principal's desk were official documents bearing the same gold logo Liam had just seen in the newspaper. His legs felt unsteady as the secretary opened the door. Mr. Anderson, they're waiting for you. The moment Liam stepped into Principal Martinez's office, the world tilted. Harold stood up, no longer the frail, helpless old man from Murphy's Diner. Instead, he was a man capable of commanding a room with his presence alone. His expensive suit was immaculate. His pale blue eyes had the sharp focus of a man accustomed to making million-dollar decisions. Hello again, son. Liam's mouth was dry. You're Harold Blackwood. I am. Harold's smile was warm yet calculating. And last night you bought one of the state's most powerful philanthropists dinner. The question is why? The room spun. Liam gripped the back of a chair for balance. I saw you needed help. I didn't care who you were. Exactly. Margaret spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of someone familiar with boardrooms and multi-million-dollar budgets. Harold, show him. Principal Martinez, who had been silent until now, slid a thick folder across his desk. Liam's school photo was clipped to the cover along with his full name in bold, Liam Anderson Candidate Assessment. We've been doing research on you for the past 72 hours, Harold explained. Opening the folder to reveal pages of documents, academic transcripts, work evaluations from Mike, letters of recommendation from teachers, and even photos of Liam helping his neighbors. Liam stared at the documents, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. You were watching me. We were assessing you, Margaret corrected gently. The Blackwood Foundation is embarking on its most ambitious project, yet a comprehensive community development initiative. We needed a local person. Someone who understands hardship but still maintains hope. Someone whose character we could trust implicitly. Precisely, Harold added, flipping through the pages of the file. Straight A's despite working 20 hours a week. Your teachers describe you as remarkably mature and genuinely kind. Your boss says you're the most dependable employee he's ever had. Mrs. Carter at the grocery store says you help her stock shelves every week without being asked. Margaret continued reading from a typed report. Mrs. Williams says you shovel her walkway every winter and refuse payment. The librarian notes that you tutor struggling students during your lunch hour. Liam felt like he was watching a movie about someone else. I don't understand. You tested me. Harold closed the file and looked Liam straight in the eyes. Last night was no accident. We have been in this town for 3 days asking questions, observing. Your name came up again and again as someone who embodies the values we are looking for. So, the broken car was a setup. Harold's voice was calm. We needed to create a situation where you could choose kindness or indifference, where that choice would cost you something you valued. And the lost wallet. Margaret patted her coat pocket, safe and sound the whole time. A wave of betrayal hit Liam like a physical punch. You lied to me. We created a scenario, Harold corrected. There is a difference. What we wanted to see was authenticity. How you would react when you thought no one was watching, when there was nothing in it for you. Principal Martinez leaned forward. Liam, they're offering opportunities that could change your life. What kind of opportunities? Liam asked, though a part of him wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Margaret opened her briefcase, the one she had clutched so carefully last night, revealing documents that took Liam's breath away. College logos, legal papers, financial reports with far too many zeros. A full scholarship to any accredited university of your choice. Harold began, his voice taking on the tone of a business presentation. Tuition room and board books, living expenses. 4 years fully paid for. During your summer and school breaks, you'll intern directly with our foundation, Margaret continued. Learning about nonprofit management, community development, social enterprise. And after graduation, Harold smiled, you will return here as the assistant director of our newest community development center. 2 years of training with our experienced team. After that, if we both agree, you'll become the director. Liam looked around the room, half expecting to wake up from an impossible dream. You want me to run a community center? We want you to help us build it first. Harold unrolled architectural blueprints across the principal's desk, detailed plans for a magnificent facility that looked like something out of a magazine. Margaret pointed to the elegant script on the building's facade. The Liam Anderson Community Development Center. You want to name it after me. Liam's voice came out as a whisper. We want you to be its founding director, Harold clarified. This is a $25 million investment in your community. But we don't just write a check and disappear. We partner with local leaders who share our vision. The numbers were unbelievable. $25 million. More money than everyone on Elm Street combined. More money than Liam thought existed outside of movies and lottery commercials. Why me? He asked, though a part of him was beginning to understand. Because change has to come from within, Margaret explained. We can build the buildings, fund the programs, and hire the staff. But true change requires a person who genuinely loves their community despite its problems. Harold nodded. Someone who sees potential instead of just poverty. Someone who gives away their last meal to a stranger because it's the right thing to do. Principal Martinez spoke. Liam, in 30 years of education, I have never seen an opportunity like this. But Liam was still processing the deception. The whole thing was a lie. Your car, your situation, your desperation, it was all fake. The test was real, Harold said firmly. Your reaction was real. Your character was real. Those are the only things that matter. We've funded hundreds of projects, Margaret added. But we've never offered a full partnership to someone your age. You would be the youngest director in our foundation's history. Harold pulled out his real business card, this time on thick solid paper with the gold logo embossed in the corner. Take 2 weeks to think about it. Visit our other community centers. Talk to the people whose lives have been changed by them. Make sure this is right for your own vision. As he handed the card to Liam, Harold's expression softened. And son, no matter what you decide about the center, your college tuition is paid for. What you did last night, giving away something precious to a stranger, deserves to be recognized no matter what happens. Liam stared at the business card, at the blueprints, at the incredible opportunity laid out on the principal's desk. There's just one important condition, Margaret said, her voice serious. You can't do this for the money or the recognition. You have to genuinely want to serve your community, because that's the only way this can ever work. Outside the principal's office, students were changing classes, moving through a normal day, while Liam sat in a room where his entire future was being rewritten. But the biggest shock was yet to come as he realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about all the people he had ever tried to help, all the people he had ever dreamed of helping, all the people who had ever believed that kindness matters even when no one is watching. This was about proving that sometimes the good guys really do win. The architectural blueprints spread across Principal Martinez's desk looked like something out of another world, a world where dreams had engineering schematics and hope came with a construction timeline. Harold Blackwood placed his finger along the outline of the building. The Liam Anderson Community Development Center will be built on the 15 acres where the old Riverside Mall used to be. We've already secured the land. Liam blinked. The abandoned mall. But it's been empty for years. Prime real estate. Margaret Blackwood confirmed, opening another folder. Perfectly located, easily accessible, and large enough for everything your community needs. The plans were breathtaking in their detail. A state-of-the-art medical clinic with exam rooms and a pharmacy. A computer lab equipped with the latest technology. Vocational training facilities with equipment for everything from automotive repair to culinary arts. A library with study spaces and meeting rooms. Even a commercial kitchen for community meals and catering training. This floor is for healthcare services, Harold explained, pointing to the ground floor. Full medical and dental clinics staffed by professionals, but at an affordable cost for everyone. We're talking about routine care, chronic disease management, and preventative medicine. The second floor is focused on education and vocational training, Margaret continued. Computer literacy, GED prep vocational certification programs. We want to give people skills that lead to real jobs. Liam studied the plans, his mind reeling. You're talking about everything this community has needed for decades. Exactly. Harold's eyes lit up. But here's what makes this project different from conventional philanthropy. This isn't about us coming in to fix things. This is a partnership. We provide the resources. You provide the local knowledge and leadership. Principal Martinez leaned forward. Liam, the economic impact alone will be transformative. Construction jobs, long-term employment rising, property values, new businesses attracted to the area. Margaret opened her briefcase again, revealing financial projections that made Liam's head spin. We're projecting an initial construction cost of $15 million plus a $10 million endowment for operations. But the real value comes from what happens after that. What do you mean? Harold slid another document across the desk. Conservative estimates suggest this center will serve over 3,000 people annually. Clinic visits, educational programs, job placements, community events. We're talking about impacting virtually every family in this area. The numbers were staggering. But what affected Liam most was seeing his neighborhood's problems framed in official documents accompanied by tangible solutions. Roosevelt High's computer lab hasn't been updated in 8 years. Margaret read from her notes. 41% of adults in this area lack basic digital literacy. The nearest medical clinic is 12 miles away, creating transportation barriers for the elderly and low-income residents. We know, Harold added, because we spent 6 months researching this area before we ever set foot in Murphy's Diner. 63% of children live below the poverty line. But we also found something else. He flipped to a page filled with interview transcripts. Liam recognized the names of neighbors, teachers, and local business owners. Page after page mentioned his name. They talk about the young man who helps carry groceries. Margaret read, the one who tutors kids at the library, the one who shows up at community meetings with ideas and optimism, the one who treats everyone with respect regardless of their circumstances. You've already been a community leader, Harold remarked. We're just providing you with the tools to expand your impact. Liam looked at the salary figures and nearly fell out of his chair. More money than his grandma Eleanor had seen in her entire life. Enough to ensure her medical care, to fix up their house. To change not just his life, but hers as well. There's one important condition, Margaret said, her voice turning serious. You can't do this for the money or the recognition. The moment this becomes about personal gain instead of community service, it will cease to work. How do you know I won't change? Liam asked. How do you know success won't corrupt me? Harold smiled. Because yesterday you gave away your dinner to a stranger. Not because you had to. Not because anyone was watching. But because it was the right thing to do. Character that runs that deep doesn't change with the circumstance. Margaret added, it only grows stronger with resources. Principal Martinez spoke. Liam, I've watched you for 4 years. You are the same kid whether you're washing dishes or tutoring in the library, whether you have money in your pocket or have to walk home in the rain because you gave your bus money to someone else. Harold pulled out a thick contract. This is what we're proposing in specific terms. A full scholarship to any accredited university. Your choice of school, your choice of major. During your summer and school breaks, you'll work directly with our foundation's team at existing centers in Chicago, Atlanta, and Denver. You'll learn how to write grant applications, develop programs, do community outreach, manage finances. Margaret continued. Everything you need to run a major nonprofit. After graduation, you return here as the assistant director working with our team for 2 years. Then, upon mutual agreement, you'll become the director with full autonomy. The contract included details that made it all unbelievably real. A starting salary for the assistant director position of $65,000 per year. A director's salary of $90,000 plus performance bonuses, health insurance, a retirement plan, a professional development budget. We also propose a community advisory board. Harold added, local people who help guide the programs and ensure we're meeting real needs. This isn't about imposing solutions from the outside. This is about amplifying the wisdom of local people with the right resources. Liam thought about his grandma Eleanor's medical bills, about Roosevelt High's outdated computers, about the empty buildings on Elm Street that could become thriving businesses. What if I'm not ready? He asked softly. What if I fail? Then you will have failed trying to help your community. Margaret replied. That's not failure, that's courage. Harold leaned back in his chair. Son, we've funded hundreds of projects over the past 20 years. We know potential when we see it. You have something most people never develop the ability to see what could be instead of just what is. Plus, Margaret said with a smile, you'll have the full support of a $200 million foundation. You won't be doing this alone. Liam stared at the documents, the blueprints, the impossible opportunity laid out before him. Everything he had ever dreamed for his community, made real in precise architectural details, and backed by more resources than he had ever imagined. Take your time, Harold said gently. Visit our other centers. Talk to the directors who started exactly where you are. Make sure this is right. But deep down, Liam already knew his answer. The question wasn't whether he wanted the opportunity. The question was whether he was brave enough to believe he deserved it. Liam's decision was quick and resolute. He didn't need 2 weeks to think. That night, he sat with his grandma Eleanor in her old armchair and told her everything. From the given-away meal to the magnificent blueprints on the principal's desk. Eleanor listened, her eyes lighting up not at the huge numbers, but at the light of hope in her grandson's eyes. I always knew you'd do great things, she said, her voice trembling. I just didn't think it would come so fast and be so big. Liam accepted. And almost immediately, his life changed dramatically. The call from the Blackwood Foundation came the next morning, and an appointment was set. Liam was taken to the airport the first time in his life he had ever been on a plane. He flew to Chicago to visit one of the Blackwood Foundation's community centers. It was exactly like the blueprints he had seen. Throughout that summer, Liam interned in Chicago. He didn't just learn how to manage programs. He learned how to listen to the community, how to turn problems into solutions. He learned how to write grant applications, how to create a budget, and how to talk to local leaders. Liam, the 17-year-old dishwasher, now sat in meetings with executives, legislators, and financiers. While still timid, his deep understanding of the Oak neighborhood's problems made everyone listen. When autumn arrived, Liam started classes at Northwestern University, one of the most prestigious schools in the country. He chose to major in nonprofit management. His student life was nothing like what Jerome imagined. Liam didn't go to parties. He spent his time in the library, studying and talking to his professors, who were impressed by his maturity and vision. Every weekend, he called Eleanor. She had moved into a new apartment with modern heating and comfortable living space. She received the best medical care, and Liam no longer had to worry about her medication bills or missed doctor's appointments. Eleanor's life, after decades of hardship, had finally found peace. 18 months later, the change in the Oak neighborhood was no longer a plan on paper. It was a miracle. Where the old abandoned Riverside Mall once stood, the Liam Anderson Community Development Center now rose as a beacon of hope. The glass walls reflected the morning sunlight. The modern architecture blended with the residential features, and everywhere people moved with a clear purpose. Liam, now 20, and a college sophomore, spent his winter break overseeing the preparations for the grand opening. He was taller, his gait full of confidence, but his eyes still held the same kindness that had caught Harold's attention. The medical clinic had been open for 6 months and had immediately changed everything. Dr. Sarah Martinez had seen over 800 patients. Eleanor was one of them. Her diabetes was under control. Her arthritis was being treated with physical therapy, and the oxygen tank was put away for good. Son, Eleanor said, sitting on their newly renovated porch, do you see that sign? The massive banner read, "The Liam Anderson Community Development Center, changing lives together." It still feels like it has someone else's name on it, Liam admitted. It has the name of the man you became when you chose kindness over convenience, she said. Inside the center, the computer lab was buzzing with activity. 30 adults were learning practical skills that led to jobs. Mrs. Carter discovered she had a knack for digital inventory management. Jerome's mother enrolled in graphic design classes and had her first client within 2 months. The vocational training programs exceeded all expectations. Auto repair, culinary arts, healthcare administration, all led to certifications that employers sought. Test scores at Roosevelt High increased by 22% in the first year. Students now had quiet study spaces. Modern computers and tutoring programs run by college students who looked just like them. The center's commercial kitchen became something unexpected. Mike expanded his catering business, hiring 6 new employees from the vocational training program. Sandy opened her own restaurant, a small cafe inside the center. Local news channels reported on the event. Channel 7 ran a feature on the Liam effect, chronicling how one center had created a ripple of change throughout the neighborhood. Property values on Elm Street rose as abandoned houses were renovated by residents who learned construction skills at the center. The governor of the state attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The Blackwood Foundation's model proved that sustainable change requires local leadership backed by strategic investment. We are launching similar partnerships in 5 other communities, a foundation official said at the press conference. But the real stories happened quietly. Elderly people getting routine health screenings. Teenagers choosing study groups over hanging out on street corners. Small businesses being established creating jobs for neighbors who had once lost all hope. Crime dropped by 18% in the first year, not because of increased security, but because people had better things to do. Harold and Margaret attended every milestone, but they stood in the back, letting Liam and the community take center stage. In his ribbon-cutting speech, Liam thanked them, but focused on the neighbors who had turned a vision into reality. "This center exists," he said, "because Mrs. Patterson believed in her student, because Mike showed kindness to a dishwasher, because my grandma Eleanor taught me that generosity multiplies when you share it." The applause echoed through the glass walls, but Liam noticed Harold wiping his eyes. A reporter approached Liam afterward. "What's next for the center?" "Sustainability," Liam replied. "We don't just provide services. We teach people how to provide services for each other. In 5 years, this community won't need us. They'll be helping other communities." That's an unusual goal for a nonprofit director. The goal is never to create dependency. The goal is to create capacity. There's a difference. 6 months after the opening, that difference was clear. The center's programs had created 43 new jobs, launched 12 small businesses, and placed 67 people in full-time jobs outside the community. But the most important number was 1, a single act of kindness that had multiplied into 1,000. What no one could have predicted was what would happen next, as Liam faced his first real challenge as a leader, proving that character under pressure is the exact same as character in poverty. 2 years later, Liam, now 22 and the official director of the center, sat in his office reviewing applications for the foundation's latest scholarship program. Through the window, he watched children playing in the center's playground, while their parents took GED prep classes. The walls of his office told the story of change, framed photos of the center under construction, the first graduating class of the culinary program, Eleanor cutting the ribbon for the medical clinic's expansion, and Harold and Margaret at last month's community appreciation banquet. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Sandy from Murphy's Diner poked her head in her face, a mix of concern and determination. "Liam, I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "But there's a family at the diner. Their car broke down and they can't pay for their meal. I remembered what you did that night and thought, maybe." Liam smiled, closing his laptop without a moment's hesitation. "I'll be right there." Murphy's diner looked exactly the same. The fluorescent lights, the worn booths, the smell of coffee and possibility. But the corner table where Harold and Margaret had once sat was now occupied by a young Hispanic couple with two small children huddled together and whispering anxiously. The woman was apologizing in broken English while her husband counted out coins with trembling hands. Their clothes were frayed, their eyes holding that familiar mix of pride and desperation that Liam knew all too well. "Ma'am, sir," Liam said, approaching their table with two meals from the counter. "This one's on me." As they ate, he listened to their story. Miguel and Rosa had migrated north for construction work promised by Rosa's cousin. Their car broke down on the highway, and their life savings were only enough to pay for the tow. They had skills, Miguel in construction, Rosa in childcare, but no connections, no references, no way to prove their worth to potential employers. "You know," Liam said thoughtfully, "we're always looking for good people at the community center. I can't promise anything long-term, but maybe we can help you get a start." He pulled out his business card, simple professional with the center's gold logo. On the back, he carefully wrote their last name just as Harold had once written his. "Miguel and Rosa Santos." He read aloud just as Harold had once repeated his name. "And your phone number." 2 hours later, Miguel was reviewing job opportunities in the center's construction training program. Rosa was discussing childcare positions with the center's family services coordinator. Their children had already made friends in the youth program. That evening, Harold called to check in on the center's quarterly progress. "How are things, Director Anderson?" "Good," Liam replied, watching Miguel help other trainees with the electrical systems program, while Rosa tidied up the children's play area. "Really good. I think I'm starting to understand something you once told me." "What's that?" "That kindness is the only investment that always pays a dividend." Harold chuckled. "And what's your rate of return so far?" Liam looked out at the thriving center, thinking about Eleanor's improved health, Jerome's college acceptance letter, the 43 jobs created, the 12 businesses started, the thousands of lives touched. "Immeasurable," he said. That night, as Liam walked home passing the bustling community center that bore his name, he realized the most important lesson of all. Change is not a destination. It's a choice you make every day, one act of kindness at a time. The Liam Anderson Community Development Center now serves over 4,000 people annually, proving that when kindness meets opportunity, entire communities can be transformed. But this story isn't unique. It's happening in neighborhoods across the country, led by ordinary people who chose extraordinary compassion. Right now, in your community, someone just like Liam is washing dishes after school, helping an elderly neighbor, believing in possibilities others can't see. They aren't waiting for permission to make a difference. They're already doing it in small acts. What if your kindness could unlock someone's potential? What if a stranger's generosity could change the trajectory of your life? Think about a person in your life who showed you an unexpected act of kindness. Share their story. Let's remind each other that change begins by seeing people, not just their circumstances. And that's our story, guys. The tale of Liam Anderson isn't just a modern-day fairy tale. It's a powerful reminder that kindness always finds a way. No matter where you are or what you're doing, a small act can create a big impact. Never underestimate the power of a good heart. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.